there is some interesting innovation happening with DARPA, and you being part of DARPA, the N3 program, which had 6 startups, and I had the privilege of having two of them on the podcast, Xerox Sparks and Batel, and you are also part of the Human Brain Project or European Union. So could you shine light on some of the cutting edge innovation when it comes to neurotech?
Sure. I mean, I think you mentioned what I consider to be one of the most exciting projects in current neurotechnology, which is the DARPA N3 project. I mean, essentially, the idea is what's communicated in the title of that project: next generation non-invasive neuromodulation. The idea here is to utilize exceedingly small scale devices that are capable of both sensing the micro and macro environment of the brain and transmitting to that micro and macro environment, utilizing implantable devices, essentially nanoscalar transmitters and sensors, that can be implanted within the brain with minimally invasive or non-invasive means. In other words, providing this material for these sensors, that can be injected into the bloodstream, inhaled, ingested, and then guided into the brain space in a very precise, vast array of sensing and transmitting electrodes that can be accessed remotely, which then allows remote capability to read from the living brain and interpret, if you will, the brain's language of communication utilizing decision technologies, computational algorithms, and AI, but also to write into the living brain, utilizing, if you will, remote sensing and transmitting capability that is able to translate across scales from the meso and macro level all the way down to the nanoscale to be able to modulate the node network activity in the brain on a variety of levels, from the very, very local to the almost systemic. And in that way, be able to both read information from the brain's processes of cognition, emotions, and the decisions that ultimately guide behaviors, and then affect those cognitions, emotions, and behaviors. At the same time, that is incredibly exciting in terms of its provocativity of the way such technology might be used for biomedical approaches, it absolutely opens a Pandora's jar of what could be seen as capricious, contentious, or even nefarious uses. And it does speak to the idea that in reality, what we're talking about here is, quote, reading from the living brain. And if we consider the function of the living brain to be the mind, well, that's mind reading. And writing into the living brain, in other words, modulating the living brain remotely. And if we consider those functions once again to be mind, well, then axiomatically, that is mind control.